Welcome to the North Tonawanda Football Hall of Fame YouTube channel. I'm Ed Helinski. We've got another great guest here today from Cape Coral, Florida, 1990 Hall of Famer, the one and only Guy Fire. Guy, good to see you. Great background shot behind you. Look at that. Cape Coral, Florida. You've been down there for about 17 years. Glad you could join me today. How's things going today?
Oh, things are going great. The weather's been good. Everything's fine.
I want to talk. You have an interesting, football career, and also an interesting wrestling career. I really don't know where to start, except I'm going to get into your football career. There's been discussion that you played at either 5'4" or 5'6", and you played linebacker, and better yet, you played left guard.
Yeah.
145 pounds, probably soaking wet at that point. How did that happen, and how did that evolve with George Vetter and the rest of the coaching staff? I can understand linebacker, but left guard, walk us through this.
Well, it started, I think, with JV football when I missed my freshman year because I started out in a seminary my first year, but I found out early that wasn't my calling. So I came back to NT, and that's where I got into the wrestling program at the end of my freshman year and track. And then I was eligible for JV football the following year. And I started out as a first string halfback. And I didn't really care for that position that much. And it looked like the linemen were having more fun. So I thought I'd give it a try, and it stuck.
What position? But of all the linemen George Vetter could have picked, and I'm sure he had quite a bit. Why did he choose you?
I think my size gave away to the advantage of being quick. We used the pulling guard an awful lot, and he knew I wasn't afraid to come around and try to chop somebody down when our halfback had the football. And, NT was pretty much a running football team, and so that part of it stuck. And he noticed that when I played defense, it was really hard for those big guys to get a good block on me. And I was able to make a lot of tackles because of that. So it really worked out well for me. I was just first of all, it was a dream to even be on the football team. It's every young kid's dream, to play football at North Tonawanda. So it did really pan out for me. And it worked. I mean, I was able to do what they wanted me to do, and I did it, and it worked out.
You must have made a big impression on the other Niagara Frontier League coaches because you were named All Western New York.
Yeah.
Getting back to that, your junior and senior year, you were also part of the wrestling program as well too at that point, weren't you? Under Mr. Rotundo?
Yeah, 4 years. Yeah. I was on 3 championship wrestling teams, and of course the sectional team. We won the whole sectionals under Coach Rotundo. And I'll tell you, those coaches back at NT, they worked you. But it was a labor of love. We did it for the school, not so much for ourselves, because we had that NT thing in us,
What I've heard very different stories about Coach Vetter and his feelings about guys going to the wrestling team. What was his feeling about you becoming a wrestler?
Well, he never voiced an opinion to me about it. All he knew is that when football season came around, he knew I was in pretty good shape. So I didn't have any problems with the workouts or the scrimmages or all the things that we did, because a lot of times our workouts were worse than a regular football game. But it was all fun. It was all a lot of fun, a lot of work.
How much of your wrestling background helped you with high school football?
Personally, I think it helped tremendously because you learn good balance, you learn a lot of takedowns or just like a lot of tackles. So all of that stuff, and you work on your neck muscles, you work on every part of your body is really given a good workout, and it worked out very well.
What do you recall about those 62 and 63 seasons?
Oh, unbelievable. Unbelievable. Our championship team in 62 was just unbelievable. I don't think anybody could have beat us. And then the 63 team was a different story. We came in and we thought we were going to have the championship that year. We were great. But what happened was in the first 3 or 4 games, we lost 4 good senior starters. And it was like Louis Sordo, Jim Fire, Dan Keller, Bob Kasalowitz. I mean, these were all good seniors. And there's probably others in the back of my head that I can't remember. And those gaps had to be filled. And we were just starting the season. And these guys, we were lost with season-ending injuries, like broken bones. And but we fought our way through the season and still came out pretty good. And I still joke with the Tonawanda guys, Rick Casada and them. I says, you know, the team we went in there with, you guys should have beat us about 30-0. We just joking, you know. But we came out okay. We lost, but we did okay.
You grew up over on Sweeney Street. In our previous telephone conversation that we had, you grew up in a nice area. You had the Ganson Street crowd, boys. You had, but the big input was the boys club over on Vanderburg.
Yeah.
Talk about those days.
Well, when we were kids, that was our place to go back in the 50s. I mean, everybody that in that area from Sweeney all the way up, you know, halfway through town anyways. And at that time, there was a fella named George Miller from Tonawanda. He became a Tonawanda wrestling coach and a teacher over in Tonawanda, city of Tonawanda. At that time, he ran the gym there at the Vanderburg Street Club, and he was going to school to get his teaching license, which he ended up working at. He was actually my very first coach, because at that time there was a boxing program going on Channel 4 TV. It was sponsored by Squirt Bottling Company. And so I got picked to represent the Tonawanda Boys Club, and he'd have me down in the basement. He'd go up to get guys off the pool tables and come down and spar with me. And anybody that knows George Miller, he knows how to whip people in shape. He used to take me up to the boys club up in Buffalo a couple times. He took me up there to work out. It was always in Buffalo though. So anyways, when it came my turn to be on TV to box, I was there and I boxed this guy from Buffalo, and we didn't go the whole route. And I won, but anybody that knows George Miller, he knew how to whip somebody in shape. He had very successful wrestling teams over in Tonawanda too, by the way.
Getting back to your boxing, your brother Dan, messaged me and he said that you were so overwhelming your opponent that they cut the commercial, and people probably didn't see the end of the boxing match.
They did do that. They in fact, I don't think they saw the rest of it. There wasn't much of a rest. They stopped the whole thing. Yeah.
Your high school football days, left guard. Do you remember the biggest person or how big the person was that you ever faced across the line from you?
Oh, definitely. But he was on my team. Steingasser, a guy named Steingasser. He went 350 pounds. And him and I used to alternate, believe it or not, on defense. Coach Vetter would send them in for certain things, and then he'd send me in because Steiny, we were just total opposites. And boy, that was kind of confusing to the other team. And that was on our championship team. And the only thing was like in one practice, like I said, some of our practices, you got hurt more in a practice than you did in a game because Coach Vetter and all Bluack and all them, they worked us pretty good in practices. And somehow or another, Steiny stepped on my finger. I was down and I don't know, oh, did that hurt? Right on. I'm glad it wasn't broke, but it hurt. It really hurt. That's the only time I actually got really hurt, but didn't need any medical attention. But Steiny, he was a big guy. Yeah, he was. In fact, in the Tonawanda game was the first time, he was like a gentle giant. And the first time I ever saw him in the TNT game, and he was on offensive, and he just, something overwhelmed him that day. He was going to be mean that day, tough. And I saw him lift two guys right up in the air with both arms. Boom. But it was all fun. It was good.
You mentioned Bluack. What do you recall about Coach Bluack?
Well, there was a couple things I loved about Mr. Bluack. He was always really good, nice to me, good to me. And I think we got along. Him and I were about the same stature too. We could almost see eye to eye. And he was my tape guy. He made sure before get into the game, everything that had to be taped, he taped it. The ankles, maybe a few fingers or whatever. And especially for the TNT game, he put a little extra tape on me. No, Mr. Bluack was he was great. And in fact, I'll have to tell you, I had him as a history teacher, and he taught great history. He kept everybody interested in the class. He was a super man, great guy.
Who were some of the other coaches or people that were influential in your life during your high school years?
Well, Mr. Seebeck, well, naturally, he didn't have much. I knew him very well and everything, but I didn't have to go. He wasn't in where I was working, doing my job was at. But I go back to coaches like Bob Ivory, who taught track, because I was in track too, and believe it or not, I was a pole vaulter. It sounds kind of funny, but not too many short guys are pole vaulters. But they needed a pole vaulter, and Ivory says, "Oh, gotta." This is back in the old high school. He says, "Go downstairs. You got to go get these poles." And I'm looking at these poles, and they were made out of bamboo. I mean, I says, "What the heck? You're supposed to pole vault with these?" And finally, they broke down and they bought a real fiberglass pole, But it was funny about stuff like that. But it all worked out. In fact, I pole vaulted even my senior year track and plus we ran like relays and stuff like that. But Ivory and there was Sternin, and they were all very, influential in my life. All of them. They knew how to get behind you and encourage you. Teach you the right things, and it was just the way they were. They were fair wherever there was fairness, there was fairness.
What was the TNT experience like back then? The games against Tonawanda? Well,
it was different for a lot of guys. I know it was for Casada, but with me, I got along with both sides on both sides of the canal. Because I was so close, that gas town guys, Tonawanda, that part there. I mean, I kind of grew up with all them guys because being right there. And not only that, as the Tonawanda football clinic, McCarthy played in it, and we had a whole bunch of guys. We went over to Tonawanda and actually formed the clinic over there. We divided up all us NT guys, and we made a bunch of little teams. Then we had the sponsors with Buffalo Steel that bought in Gastown that bought our uniforms, and businesses, different businesses that bought uniforms, and the whole community was involved. And my dad coached one team there because he worked at the steel plant there over there, and it was a community involvement. It was just wonderful, just wonderful.
When it came down to the game time, how intense was the rivalry?
The rivalry was there. There's no getting around that. The rivalry was there. Everybody, like for myself, it was funny. A lot of guys that were right on the other side of the line with me, we'd actually smile at one another, but boy, we would hit one another. But that's, it's like playing against your brothers for me. But a lot of the guys that were from, let's say, up on the avenues and the north end of town, or different parts of the city that didn't have that, lived near the city of Tonawanda, they had there was no relationship there. Where I always had a relationship with the guys from Tonawanda. Not so much Rick, because Rick, he was mostly just football, and while he played basketball, which I had nothing to do with it. But he lived up on the river. But that's just how it was. This little, but the rivalry, when I went to the TNT game, I was only there to win. Win, and if we didn't win, I'm going to give him 110%, everything I've got to win. Because that's to me is if I can walk away from that game, even if we lost, knowing that I gave it all, that's what really mattered to me. Because the guy on the other side of me, I want him to say, hey, he did a good job. That made it for me.
You grew up in a home of with 5 other brothers.
Well, we had let's see, the Butchie, Joey, David, Danny, and myself. We had quite a house full. I had 5 sisters, and I think that's what helped me play sports a lot, because I didn't want to be around the house too much.
But also, was it a competitive atmosphere back then with all especially with all the boys?
Believe it or not, there wasn't. My younger brothers, my dad always told me, Guy, you do good by setting example. And I knew what he meant by setting an example. In other words, do good at sports or whatever you're doing, but stay out of trouble. I don't want no policeman bringing you home. But he always preached, the way you do the most is when you set life by example. And it got me through pretty darn good. And that's why I said there wasn't any rivalries there. And I know that, and I paid off, especially with my brother Danny and David. They ended up coaching and did well in sports, and had a wonderful life. They're both retired now, enjoying life, and it all worked out well. Yeah.
After high school, you didn't go to college, and you knew your high school football career was going to end with your last game. And I believe you went to the service at that point. Even though you were going to the service, was it difficult for you to take the helmet and take off the helmet and hang up the spikes?
Well, the hardest part for me, believe it or not, was after that TNT game, when I was walking off the field knowing this is it. I won't go on to college and play football. There's just no way. I've got to face reality. I'm not really big enough for college. I could do what I did in high school here, which was far beyond my expectations, and it worked out well. But I knew I wasn't football material for college. But I knew wrestling was a possibility. But college was really never on my mind. And even with wrestling, until I got a call to go out to Minnesota. And so I did, and I was working out with Division I wrestlers out there. But I was kind of young, and I just wasn't prepared for it. And I wrestled these guys, and I'm saying to myself, oh my God, I know guys back home that should be here. You know, and that's just the way it was. And I was serious. And because I wasn't ever prepared for it. Because when I went out there, I had a place to stay. I had somebody that I told what I wanted to eat in the morning, what I wanted to this. I mean, you were weighted on hand and foot. Nobody ever told me it was going to be like that. And then there was the break there, and that's when I left. I got in my car and I said, well, I'll go down and work at the steel mill and pick up some money because I was running out of money. And then I'll be back for college. Well, in between that time there, my mother got a letter from the service that I was being drafted. And I had to get back to Buffalo to be inducted. And there was no turning back then. So unless I went to Canada. So I went back and I got drafted into the Marine Corps for 2 years. Yeah. And then I did service there. And then when I got out, I ended up working in the Portsmouth Naval Shipyard as a tool maker. And then after that, I went to the engine plant, worked there as a tool maker. When I finished all up, it was all good. The only thing I left out on that was when I was done with my sports and back in the Tonawandas, I got a phone call, and it was really, really weird, but it was a good weird, from Hap Holloway from Tonawanda. I don't know if you remember Hap Holloway.
Oh yeah.
And I've never personally talked to him. And he asked me, he says, would you like to coach at Tonawanda High School? And it completely blindsided me because I don't have a coaching license, and you have to have a New York State coaching license. And I said, geez, could you give me time to think about it? Well, he mentioned football. I mean, be an assistant coach. And he says, well, I got to have an answer right now. And being that my love for the sport, I had to say yes. So I coached the varsity as an assistant line coach for 2 years. And then I ended up coaching the wrestling, the freshman wrestling team for about 5 years, which was a lot of fun. That was the feeder team for their Coach Bateman and them. And it was quite an experience. But the other funny part about that, when I had to go get my New York State coaching license, I'm in the classroom with some other guys and that. And we had about maybe 3 or 4 instructors in there. And I look and I said, yeah, that's John Chisera. He was one of my teachers. And I grew up with John. So that was all good. It was funny. But I ended up getting my New York State coaching license and coached for a while. And that was it's just remarkable. I look at it as remarkable how things turned out.
How was it coaching with Clint Small?
Well, at that time, Coach Small wasn't there.
Okay.
It was after Small. They brought in a young fella. Actually, he was from LaSalle, and the other assistant coach was Guido from North Tonawanda. Tom Guido's younger brother. I can't think of his first name. Mike Jim Guido, I think. And well, yeah, we all coached there for a little bit, and it all worked out.
What were your feelings like during the TNT game those 2 years that you coached for Tonawanda?
That was it was different. It was really different because at that time I knew in my mind I knew we weren't going to beat NT, but you got to keep that to yourself, Can't tell your ball players you're not going to win today. But I said, but I can prepare them. I said, you guys are going to have to really step it up a notch. These guys are going to be tough, and just try to prepare them mentally, well, and as physically as we can get them. And and you know, a lot of it's mental, and they go out there and do the best they can do. But NT had, you know, NT's NT, and they're the team that everybody wants to beat.
You assisted your brother Dan at North Tonawanda wrestling program. Some of the wrestlers who I've spoken to that were football players, they talk about you guys were the 1-2 punch. I believe you were the tactician and your brother was the inspiration and making these guys great. Talk about that.
Now the NT wrestling team. No, I didn't coach at North Tonawanda wrestling. My brother Danny and his twin brother David.
Okay.
And David was the tech, and Danny, yeah, they worked very well together. Yeah, John. That's another case where John came to me and asked me about my brother Danny. He came to me actually. He wanted to know if I would coach at NT, the wrestling team. And I told him no, I just didn't want to, because I'm kind of, when you have a full job and you're raising a family, and it was taking up so much time. And I got out of coaching altogether. And I says, but I know somebody that'd be good for you. This is my brother Danny. So he brought Danny in and, you know, checked him out and made him a coach. And he brought in his brother David. And it worked out well. Really worked out well.
1990, you were inducted into the North Tonawanda Football Hall of Fame. What were your thoughts back then when you got the phone call regarding that? And what do you think about it today, 30 years later?
To me, it's just overwhelming. It's overwhelming that people thought that what they thought about me. I never thought that about myself. It was just overwhelming, because I always thought about guys I played with that were just outstanding, like Carl Zellner. He was in the back. He always wore a hearing aid, and hardly anybody got past him on defense. Hardly anybody. And I mean, it goes on, and you know, about other guys that were so good that I didn't expect it. I just didn't expect it. It was just overwhelming. You know, I don't know how to explain it.
You played with some great guys like Dave Anastasi as well, too.
Oh, yeah.
He was your center, and you were the left guard.
Yeah.
What do you recall about Dave back then, and some of the other linemen?
Davis was as tough as they made him. I mean, in practices, sometimes I had to go on defense and scrimmage against the offense, and I was being a linebacker. I had to be right over Dave, and it was like I said, it was worse than being in a game, because when Dave had an assignment to block me as a linebacker or something like that, you knew something was, you knew you were going to get hit. Yeah, he was good.
We've talked about several different things today. What would you like to add that I haven't asked you?
Oh, I don't know. I think we've just about covered everything.
All right. There was an incident, prior to one of the TNT games. I don't know if it was 1962, 63, or 64, where there was some painting done over on the Tonawanda side.
I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, I just wondered, probably the statute of limitations has expired at this point. You wouldn't have happened to have been part of that in any way, shape, or form, would you?
Believe it or not, I was not. I was not part of that.
You guys are good and tight-lipped even to this day, aren't you?
But I remember that incident. Yeah, that was serious.
There was talk that some guys were not going to be able to play in the TNT game that year.
Yeah, that was serious. Yeah, no, I was no part of that. No way, no.
I wanted
to. Yes.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Bring bringing up Dave, see, we played against each other too in Little League football before we moved the team over to Tonawanda. And Dave, well, he grew up only a few blocks away from me. So we, but I think he always wanted to get even with me because he said that during Little League football that I broke his arm. And his arm did get broken back when he was a young kid. And he always blamed me for it. And boy, that's why I think he took it out on me in practices. But no, we were very good friends.
Who do you keep in contact with these days?
Well, I keep in contact with pretty much, we kind of just meet. It ain't like we have a meeting, like especially what's nice is like these the golden reunions at North Tonawanda reunions. I get to see it because everybody's so scattered out. And then we have a bunch down here in Florida that meet in Sarasota. And I meet a bunch of people there, when I do go. And when I go, well, I'll be home and be back in North Tonawanda in a month. And hopefully I'll get around and I'll meet people, but it's all, but we were never, we don't see people like every day or anything like that. But it's always a hug and how you doing, that sort of thing, which is super.
If you were meeting someone for the first time, you talked about high school football. What would you tell them about North Tonawanda football?
Well, I would tell them, I says, if you want to play North Tonawanda football, I says, the first thing you got to do is, well, there were two things that I know I always had to do. I had to keep my grades good, do well in my grades at school because you got to keep your grades up, and get in shape. Get in shape. Do something besides just football. Go track, swimming, whatever. Keep your body moving, stay in shape, and then take a look at it. And if that's what you want to do, because it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough. It's a body contact sport, and you can't go to the sideline every time you get a little boo-boo. So, but that's what I tell them about playing. And once you put on that uniform, you're the proudest guy in the world. Just to make it that far, because it's a dream when you're a kid to get that uniform on. I know it was a dream for us growing up. Every chance we had as kids to sneak under the fence, we never missed a game. The guys were playing in the 50s and the bands were marching and all of that. It was a big to-do, if you know. We were all proud, hoping it was a dream as a young fella to someday be on that field. And then it happens and it's like a dream come true.
Hey, I want to thank you so much for joining me today. I know that your pool is clean because the pool person was in the background cleaning the pool during this interview. So it looks wonderful and it's sparkling. But all kidding aside, Guy Fire, I want to thank you so much for joining me today. Be well, take care of yourself, and we'll catch up with you again. Thank you so much.
Ed, it's been a pleasure talking to you. Hope to see you in North Tonawanda this summer.